On this Today podcast, I want to talk about something that feels almost a little bit controversial in the home lab and self-hosting world. For a long time, especially when I was first getting started, my answer to almost everything was, I should self-host that. And honestly, I still think that mindset has a lot of value. Self-hosting teaches you an incredible amount about networking, storage, virtualization, firewalls, backups, containers, and many other core skills. But somewhere along the way, I realized something important to me. Not everything actually makes sense to self-host at home. This is not a rejection of self-hosting at all. It is more about being intentional with my learning and with my self-hosting adventures. Some services just do not add enough value for me to justify the time, the stress, and the operational overhead they require. That's my opinion. So today, I want to walk through the services that I stopped self-hosting and why cloud or managed solutions for those particular services ended up winning for me. So let's dive in and get started. Number one is self-hosting and email services. Let's start with the service of email. A decade or more ago, self-hosting email felt like a rite of passage. It gave you total control and was one of those core services that really made you feel like you were running your own infrastructure. Now, fast forward, and email has become absolutely painful to manage on your own. Due to how bad spam has gotten, email delivery depends on so many moving parts. You have to worry about DKIM, SPF records, reverse DNS, IP reputation, and that is just the baseline. Many ISPs will not even allow outbound port 25 unless you are on a business-grade circuit, so residential connections are often filtered. On top of that, some recipient domains have even more requirements layered on. What finally pushed me over the edge was realizing that email was not just another service. It is constantly a moving target that can quietly break without obvious errors. At some point, the cost-benefit for me just stopped making sense. Moving email to a managed provider removed a huge amount of friction. No more troubleshooting deliverability issues, wondering why some messages get tar-pitted while others sail right through. For me, letting go of self-hosted email was one of the best decisions I made. Email just wasn't that exciting anymore to self-host. Now, many also cite privacy issues with email, but frankly for me, I carry a smartphone and use cloud email services across the board with work and other places. So having that privacy concern with email is just not something that, to me, was that alarming. If I want to send something completely private, I'm probably not going to do that via email anyway. That's my take on the privacy aspect. Please know, there are tons of really great services and open source solutions that allow you to host your own email at home. However, I do think there are still going to be hurdles you're going to have to overcome with storage, networking, and your IP reputation. The next service I stopped self-hosting publicly is DNS, specifically public DNS. I still think running your own internal DNS server is one of the best learning experiences you can have. DNS has always fascinated me, and internal DNS unlocks so many powerful workflows. However, public DNS is a very different story for me. You absolutely can run your own authoritative DNS servers for externally facing services, but the blast radius is much larger. You may have certificates, API endpoints, monitoring systems, and external clients, all depending on that public DNS. So, If your public DNS goes down, your services might as well be offline. For me, the tipping point was the reality of home power outages and ISP issues, which happened for me a couple of times a year. I did not want a local outage to take down my public DNS, so I moved that service out to a cloud provider like Cloudflare. I still take care of my internal DNS using Split Horizon DNS. Internal clients point to my records and it gives me great flexibility. I really love the internal DNS control we have. Please do check out my recent video on Technitium clustering. It allows you to do some really powerful things in your home lab network with DNS. Now, the next service for me was remote access gateways. When I first built out my home lab, I was really super excited about running my own cool remote access solutions, things like WireGuard, OpenVPN. I had all the custom firewall rules, multiple entry points, and failover logic. But at some point, after a couple of machines in my DMZ got compromised, it became very clear that running a remote access gateway wide open to the internet was a risk that really was not worth it. Exposing services directly, even when you think you're doing everything right, is still very easy to have compromised on the edge. So for me in my home lab, my remote connectivity is all in on zero trust. I'm a big fan of services like TwinGate, as well as open source solutions like Tailscale. You do not have to open any inbound firewall ports at all, and that alone is a huge benefit. The user experience, in my opinion, is also better for modern home labs. So remote access gateways are just something I no longer self-host. Another service I no longer self-host is push notifications. Now, many may say, why? There are so many great open source solutions out there, like Gotify and others. Well, I love notifications when they work and are useful, but I absolutely hate them when they are fragile and unreliable. At one point, I realized I was spending more time maintaining my notification solutions than I was benefiting from them. And that felt completely backwards. Alerts need to arrive when they should. I don't want to debug my notification deliveries at midnight. These days, I use health checks paired with push notifications hosted with Pushover. I think Pushover is a rock-solid solution. You can literally pay $5 for a lifetime subscription for a single device. So for me, that made a whole lot of sense. Allow them to host those services, and I just consume them from my home lab. Again, maybe a little controversial, and I totally respect everyone else's ideas there. I just, for me, chose to no longer self-host the notification systems on-prem. Now, I save probably the most controversial one for last, password managers. And I think this one will probably open a can of worms. Many self-host password managers as part of their services, and I think that's incredibly cool. You can do this successfully. But for me, I sat down and thought about the risk versus the return. And the risk for me felt a little bit too high. I had a super resilient backup strategy, but it was just not something I wanted to worry about. I have a massive number of accounts across all kinds of services. The idea of potentially losing access to all of that because of a catastrophic home lab failure was just too much for me. It was a risk I wasn't really wanting to take. I also like separating lab-specific credentials from everything else. Lab passwords can live in the lab, but critical personal and business credentials for me live in the cloud with a cloud password manager provider. You don't want to get in a chicken and egg scenario where you need your password manager to recover your lab, but you need your lab up to get to that password manager. That possible catch-22 convinced me this was a service better left as a SaaS service. I know for many, the privacy concerns with trusting your passwords to a cloud entity is unnerving, and I get it. At the end of the day, for me, this was something I no longer wanted to self-host. I'm not knocking it. It's totally cool, but I'd rather spend time self-hosting services I think are a lot cooler. At the end of the day, stress and time are real metrics that I pay attention to. If a service takes away more time through troubleshooting than it gives back in learning or value, that's a strong signal it might not be a good fit for you. If a service makes you uneasy every time you leave town, that matters. I stopped self-hosting anything that caused more stress for me than the enjoyment or value I got in return. That line is different for everyone, but for me, it's the most honest way to make a good decision. That said, I'm still very serious about self-hosting. In fact, I'm running more self-hosted services now than ever before. I love self-hosting core infrastructure, storage, internal DNS, identity services, reverse proxies, logging, AI tooling, and DevOps platforms. These are areas where the learning, control, and flexibility for me far outweigh the operational cost. Wrapping this up, self-hosting is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Just like home labs themselves, knowing when not to self-host something is just as important. Giving up control in a few strategic areas made my home lab feel more reliable, more enjoyable, and far less stressful. It also freed up time to focus on the parts that actually excite me, like experimenting with new projects. Long story short, your home lab should work for you, not the other way around. Hopefully, this list gets you thinking about your own setup. If you love to self-host all the services I mentioned, that is totally fine. But what I'm hoping is to get us all thinking about running our labs as efficiently as possible. Just because you can self-host something doesn't necessarily mean it is truly wise or actually worth it. Have you recently stopped self-hosting a service? If you did, which one was it? Let me know in the comments. I really want to know.